Hey guys, I just wanted to show you today some of my favorite processing plugins for your groups, like your bass group and your drum group. And this is something that has evolved over time. You know, plugins change, and I tend to sometimes favor others or some plugins over others, and it sort of always changes, you know. But yeah, recently, as I was producing this track on a live stream, I really quickly drew for a couple of plugins for my bass group and my drum group that I think are really sick at really saturating everything nicely. So the first one for the drums is the 23 hot and cold, and I've mentioned this before, but it's just really wonderful. It works really well on drums. It really beefs them up a lot. And the thing with this one is it's not multiband, so I'm saturating the whole group, and it's quite surprising because it does a great job in the low end. On drums though, especially, I haven't found it has as good results on bass. It just seems to work well on the faster bass movements like kicks, So yeah, I basically just leave the input, leave the mix and the output, and just blend in some of the hot and the cold, and you just kind of do it by ear. But as you kind of listen here, that's at 24 and was it 19 or so. So obviously at some point you'll start to distort your kick. You can add those sort of harmonics there, and then we'll do the cold harmonics. I could actually go up even higher if I wanted to, but I don't need to saturate everything to the absolute extreme. Even with this sort of 24% and 19%, it's made a big volume jump and difference, and kind of it's squeezed out a lot of power out of the drums, So they sound really sick. Like if you take a listen on and off and back on. Really add so much weight and punch and volume to them. So that's really great for the drums, the hot and cold. Free plugin, can't go wrong. Okay, 23 DSP the company is called. Let me just check that's right. 23 DSP, that's right. Okay, and yeah, on the rest of the drum group here, I just put a mid-side EQ, just checking there's no extra stereo down in the low end. Going up to around 200 or so just for this track. That can change, depending on your tune, and a little clipper as well. Just the drums are redlining hot, up 6 dB or more. So the clipper's just on there to just knock that back to 0. Okay, so sounds excellent. And then for the bass, for this one, my favorite technique for saturation is the multipass from Kilohearts with the distortion overdrive mode. So yeah, for this one, I will just distort the high end. So let's take this off. So that's off. And back on. So loads more brightness and power in the high end. And yeah, for the bass, technically, or in the past, I would only do multi-band distortion for the high end on the drums and on the bass. It's only that I recently discovered how this 23 hot cold works really well on the whole spectrum for saturating even the low end of the drums, that I've used it on the drums, But on the bass, I don't find I get quite the same result with the hot cold. So I go back to my classic method of doing multi-band saturation, so just saturating the high end. And so in this case, I'm just doing 1.8 kilohertz and above. So it's quite high up. And yeah, I still love the overdrive mode. It's one of my favorite distortion sounds, saturation sounds from Kilohearts. It's really clean and powerful and loud. And yeah, I basically just mix the amount of drive. Obviously, up there at 20 gets way too harsh in the high end. yeah, sort of around 7 or something like that. And you know, it's a nice balance there. And you can also spread the sound here as well. So if you want to add like a tiny bit more stereo width to the high end, that kind of works nicely in small amounts sometimes, especially through that distortion unit. So that's the high end. And obviously when you're listening, you can sort of adjust the position as well here. You can kind of do it like in your mix down and hear like where the kind of best sweet spot is for that as well. Okay, so I like it sort of around 1.8 there. And the other things I've done on my bass is I've just thrown some bass samples together for this track. So they're all kind of random volumes and things. So I just put on a compressor on the bass group here just to sort of control the whole volume of all the different bass samples. So just knocking down the volume a little bit, just to keep the sort of whole bass group at a bit of a similar volume level. On the whole bass group as well, I added some reverb just in the high end. I love the chroma reverb for that because you can EQ directly in the reverb. It's got a great sound, and you can just do your dry wet separately. So I'm not sacrificing the dry. So I wouldn't ever do it on the group. I wouldn't ever do a reverb on the bass group that only had a dry and wet mix knob. I'd only put reverb on the channel directly if it had an EQ and a dry wet modulation, adjustment separately in the plugin. So otherwise I would use, like a reverb layer. But for this plugin, it's good for that, And then again, I just do some mid-side EQing on the bass. Just some gentle low cuts around sort of 100 or 90 hertz or so. So a bit lower than the drums, so you have a bit more stereo in the bass. And so then, having that multipass off and back on, great way to add volume and power through the saturation. And the other good thing about having done 2 different techniques, so the hot and cold for the drums and the multipass for the bass, is it's slightly different distortion colors as well. So it will help very subtly to add a little bit of separation between the drums and the bass, because they're going through like different plugins which have different colors. So different kind of saturation colors for each group will give you a little bit more separation in the kind of audio field, essentially I've done a similar little thing on my lead group here with the multipass. Again, I've just added a little bit of distortion in the high end. So again, it works in this very much the same way as the bass, so it's the sort of same color, but it's just another little mix down tweak really, just to get a bit more brightness out of the leads. So you don't have to do that kind of saturation only on your drums and your bass groups. You can do it on other groups if you feel like it needs it as well, So anyway, that's the whole beat then. But yeah, obviously, if I take off the multipass from the leads, the bass, and the drums, you'll hear the whole thing is a lot less powerful. We'll throw them all back on quickly, and if you can just sort of remember the volume level roughly. So much more powerful, much more in your face and wonderful. And so those are just 2 of my favorite plugins at the moment to do a really quick and successful job at adding some processing saturation to your groups. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Much love. Thank you for everyone who supports me on this channel. Leave a comment down below if it helped you out. Leave us a like as well, and subscribe if you're new. And check out the links down in my video description as well for preset packs for Serum 2, Vital, Phase Plant and Current. Loads of packs on my website. Also, you can check out my Patreon is linked down below. We have a great community over there. Thank you to everyone who recently joined. We have over 400 members on my Patreon, something like 430 or 50. But you can actually join as a free member, and then if you want to access our private Discord, you can subscribe later on. But as a free member on Patreon, you can download a bunch of free samples and presets and things like that. So it's worth going over anyway, just to start off with. And apart from that, you can also book me for one-on-one lessons. Links are down below. And you can also hit me up for mastering. Send me an email if you want me to master any of your tracks. That's it from me today. More from me very soon. Much love.